here, on the very rim of known space, justice is a long way away.
Hello, my friends, and welcome to the Space Game Junkie podcast. I, as always, am your co-host, Brian, and joining me, as always, is your co-host, Spaz.
Hello.
Your co-host, Julie.
Hey, how you doing?
Your co-host, Thorsten.
I'm still in pirate mode.
and your co-host, Jacob.
Is the parking brake on?
Friends, we have guests today. We weren't sure when we were going to get them, but it all worked out. We have joining us from Canada and Ireland. So we're all over the map today. We're literally all over the map today. Matt and Paul, the developers of This Means Warp. Welcome, gentlemen.
Thank you very much.
Oh, it is a delight to get to talk to you guys because we streamed this a couple of weeks ago, and we had so much fun playing this game. You guys have made such a marvelous thing here. Like, I don't even like FTL style games typically. I'll be honest with you. I didn't say this before because I wanted to surprise you with it. I don't like FTL style games typically because they give me anxiety. Like, I'm always worried about killing a crew member, and I get really attached to them, you know? So I usually don't play these kind of games. But your game is a great balance of being lighthearted, but also serious. Like, there are a lot of ways this game walks a tightrope. And you guys have done such a fine job in balancing things like human versus human and AI crewmates, resurrecting crewmates, that sort of thing. Like, no one really dies. So it's great. So,
Thank you very much.
It's been a long road. It's actually been really challenging to try to walk that line because we know it's a roguelike. So, you die and then everything's done and your run's over. So it's been a lot of work to try to figure out the right way to make that fun. And I think it's really just down to shenanigans is probably the main thing that I think separates like a game like this from like an FTL. It's a little less serious.
Oh my God, you could have called this Shenanigans the Game and it would have worked. That would have been, because that's what this game is. It's just one piece of shenanigans after the other, if you think about it. And it just really worked. So I might be jumping ahead. Friends, if you're not aware, well, how about you gentlemen? Can you give us the elevator pitch of what This Means Warp is? If folks, because they're probably aware if they're listening to this podcast, but just in case they're not, how would you describe the game?
So we say it's a multiplayer spaceship management roguelike. But the easiest way to describe it, as you might have alluded to there, is it's kind of like FTL, but meets Overcooked. So it has the structure of a roguelike where you're learning and strategizing and trying to get further and further in each run, but the minute-to-minute shenanigans of a fast-paced multiplayer co-op game.
I've actually never played Overcooked, and now I really want to. I've never played it. I've heard good things. I've heard really good things.
Yeah, you're missing out.
Brian, you remember when we played Totally Reliable Delivery Service?
Oh, yes, that was great.
Yeah. This has the same sort of feel. Overcooked has that same sort of feel of just controlled chaos.
That's true.
And
controlled is a strong
you're just
word.
Barely managing to hold everything together.
Controlled is a strong word. When did you guys start working on this thing? Because the version we had seemed really polished already.
Yeah, it's been a long time now. I think way back in 2018. So it's been about 4 years that we've been building the game. And it did not start that polished. So it's been a very kind of slow, one step at a time road to get to where we are today. We're launching tomorrow for anybody who's unaware. So the game's going to be available for purchase on Steam. And so this morning I was just trying to go and take a look at some of the old shots and old builds that we had just to do a bit of a comparison to see how far we've come. And yeah, it's been a lot. It's pretty different from where it was 4 years ago.
Now, one thing I wanted to touch on that amazed me about your game, and I'd like to talk a lot about this if you don't mind, is the AI crewmates. Now, it's tough to get AI right. AI is a very tricky thing. but the AI for your crewmates it's astounding. I'm just gonna throw that out there. It's astounding because they do their jobs, they do them intelligently, and they don't get in the way, and they don't like get stuck. Like, it was amazing watching two of us play and have two AI crewmates and having the AI crewmates do exactly what you would want them to do when you want them to do it. So you didn't have to worry about them. How much work, I'm not going to say you got them right because that's like, that could jinx it, but they're marvelous. So how much work went into the AI for, I guess, both the enemies and your crewmates? Because it's just marvelous.
Well, thanks, first of all. The answer is a lot. What's quite interesting is, further to the point that you were mentioning earlier about accessibility and making it a game that isn't necessarily too punishing or allows people of different play styles to play, then I think the AI was really a core part of that. And originally we just had one companion if you were playing single player, just to allow you to experience the same kind of gameplay as if you were multiplayer. But we expanded that out as we saw people were enjoying it more and more, so that you can recruit crew members if you're playing 1, 2, or 3 players. And then I guess what you also mentioned there is the enemy crew is all AI based as well. So we just used a similar system for both ships and try and utilize it the best we can. So they're not perfect, not perfect yet. We still get a few people who suggest comments and things, and it's really interesting to see the unusual scenarios that people find themselves in with the AI. And there's a few things that we can add there. But all in all, I think they've been coming along, and we've had feedback through alpha and through beta where we've had players, a lot of people in the game testing them out and making suggestions. So we've managed to improve based on those that feedback from people.
Yeah, it was just amazing watching them, like, because we play so many games, and there are so many games where, especially like this, where the AI just isn't that good, and either you tell them to do a thing and they either get stuck on a piece of scenery, or they don't do it quickly, or they don't do it right. But when you tell I love how you kind of give your AI just kind of jobs. Like, you can kind of direct them too, but you can give them jobs to do so you don't have to micro them. And they do such a good job doing the jobs you've asked them to do, whether it's delivering ammo or repairing things or whatnot. So I gotta say, like, for a single player, especially like myself, I usually prefer single player games. Seeing a game with good AI is really just wonderful, because so many games just either don't have good AI or don't have AI at all. So I wanted to thank you guys.
Yeah, you can kind of understand why as well, with the amount of it takes a lot of work and experience with people playing to really iron out a lot of the AI issues. But there's also an element where you can't make the AI too good, otherwise you could potentially end up with the player standing around just watching things happen on their ship. So that's another balance that you have to kind of consider. Some of the suggestions and things that we got from people were great ideas to make the AI more efficient and more effective, but it could potentially ruin the game if you're just waiting around waiting for the computer to do things. So it's somewhere in the middle is kind of the balancing act.
Yeah, and this game seems to be multiple balancing acts. Like, not just the AI, but the tasks you give the player. Like the one we only played with the one ship, but the ship wasn't too big that it took you too long to get to a thing and deal with the situation, for example. So that was nice. And it was like there was a lot of chaos, but it never felt unfair. It never felt like, oh, I can't get there in time because the ship's too big or something. So, oh, how God damn it. You know what I mean? So you guys seem to be walking a lot of tightropes with a game like this and succeeding. Is that like the biggest challenge, is balancing all those things out?
Honestly, like, that's been like you described it perfectly. We are walking a lot of tightropes, and with the style of game, it really can like tip one way or the other very quickly. You can either get overpowered and it stops being fun, or you get underpowered and it feels like there's no way to come back. And so it's just been like I guess like one of my personal mantras for like how to get a game to be balanced and tweaked is just small continuous adjustments. Like I always found when I was playing a game like a big MMO or something, they do these giant patches and waves, and they like overhaul 4 classes, and they make 1,000 different changes to something like all at once, and then everything's now broken just in a different way. So we've really taken the approach where like we have a bunch of basically files where I can go and fiddle and tweak numbers, and just every time we play, I'm probably changing something by just a little tiny amount to try to get it to tune in a little bit better. And we've just been doing that constantly for 4 years now. So it's finally getting a little better, but there have definitely been some stages where it was really like, everything felt fine until it got wildly out of control just because one enemy fight got really hard or something. So it's been same thing, just a lot of little bits of work to try to get us here.
So is that where you say is that where you would say you are in the development now? Like you have the foundation built, and now it's like a lot of tweaking and adjusting to refine it, to make it, to build it toward 1.0. Is that where you guys would say where you are right now?
Yeah, I think we're really going to be focused in on 2 things. One, just balancing in general. I think we're at a pretty good state, but obviously once we launch tomorrow, we'll hopefully get a big enough audience that we'll learn all the areas that we're wrong. And the other piece is just, now that we've got all the core systems in, and like Paul was saying, he's done a phenomenal job with the AI, and we've really just built everything so that it's kind of modular. So now we're just going to be in a position where we try to, work on extra content. So we've got some new content drops planned post-launch already, and we're looking to kind of expand out everything that's in the game. So it's pretty full as is. Like we've had a lot of really good feedback from players feeling like, the game's in a really good state for being an early access launch. I think because we've all been burned by EA games before that aren't really games, and they're half done or something like that. So this is the state where we wanted everything to be able to launch and feel like really, really satisfied with that, because, we're gamers ourselves. Like I wouldn't buy something if it wasn't put together. But the next steps are really just content. So new missions, new guns, new interactables, like different enemy types, and just all sorts of different ways to kind of change up the game. And one of the other really cool things about the game is because everything is kind of, everything pulls from the same system. So like enemies can get, if we put a new gun in, the enemies can get it too. And so what we found is by adding in like 1 or 2 new items, it actually just adds a ton of variability to how the game plays. So it's been a lot of fun, because previously like we did a gun pass where we put in like 4 new guns or something, and the whole game changed. Like it was just a complete toss up for where everything was from like balancing and functionality before. So it should be really cool, because we're in a spot now where we can pump out a couple new things, and it's really going to add a lot of variability for players.
So we played the I guess it's the early access version for roughly 2 hours, and I felt like we barely saw the tip of the iceberg.
Well, you did. I
did. Excuse me, I did. But in those, I'm saying in those 2 hours,
I got 10 hours with it. I got 10 hours with it up until today, and I've been through the current amount of levels twice on easy. I'll make sure that's clear. But I have been through that twice, and there's a lot to see, which I will not spoil.
There's probably about 10, like I'd say a good 10 hours of content of just straight kind of playthrough grinding and stuff that should pop up. But again, because of the variability and the kind of procedural nature of the game, you'll get a lot of different loadouts. There's always a different mission type. There's a different way to do weapons. Paul and I are currently working on a nightmare mode as well, so that for people who enjoy a challenge, you can kind of like continuously push the boundaries of that limit. It's live in the demo as well for anybody who's given that a shot, and that lets you kind of like play on a harder difficulty and then unlock another harder difficulty and kind of just have an unlimited amount of replayability if you're having fun with the game.
Oh my god!
Yay!
I felt like easy was a challenge for me, so I can't imagine playing this on Nightmare. Oof.
Yeah, it's we've played a lot of the game, so it's gotten to the point now where we just need to keep putting in modes to challenge ourselves. After a few thousand hours, you get pretty good.
Well, I mean that's amazing. 1,000 hours, my god! And you guys clearly are on board after thousands of hours, so that speaks to the longevity of the game.
Yeah, there was a period I think where I was getting sick of playing because we'd been stuck on the same content for a long time. We hadn't added any new pieces. We were working on all the fundamental systems, and then we kind of pushed that big content load for a while there after I think it was after the alpha, and it just revitalized everything. It got so much fun, and yeah, like we still have a good time every week. We sit down and do at least one run, and it's constantly a blast.
Now,
speaking of the balancing acts from earlier, it's also worth thinking about the differences when you play with, like, on your own versus with people, or with 2 people or 4 people. Then the game changes quite significantly because the amount of chaos and things that we can throw at you has to be balanced based on the number of players. So that also means it can vary up a run quite a lot if you go in with a different group of people who are more or less experienced with the game. You can get a load of new content with that as well.
does the game adapt to like how you're playing? Like, can it see like, oh, they're doing really well, we need to up the ante? Is that like a thing, or are you just talking about number of players? It adapts to the number of players.
It more adapts to the number of players. So with it being a roguelike, we want people to experience the challenge, and that means that there has to be a real serious risk of dying, because that's where really what gets your heart rate up, right? So that's part of the fun of the game is struggling and dying potentially before you reach the end, and then playing again, learning from those experiences and getting further. So in order to get that experience, we can't cheat too much in terms of adapting it. So if you're going too well, it kind of hammers you, or if you're doing poorly, it saves you, just because we want to make sure that your progress is determined by your skill level and your coordination as a team.
There might be a couple of hidden features that nobody quite knows about that we do small adjustments here and there, but yeah, the general gameplay stays the same based on your difficulty.
Oh, that's good. That's good. So one thing I love about the game, and I'm asking all the questions. Co-host, if you have anything to say, please interrupt me. I don't want to hog the thing.
All right, I'm going to interrupt you because Luke mentioned something that I wanted to talk about.
Okay.
And that is the artwork. The cell shaded artwork that, although I don't know the game that he mentioned, Wacky Racers, but to me it's a little like Borderlands kind of cell shaded. And I love Pants. I don't know if Pants is supposed to be an alligator and the other one is supposed to be a bird, but it's like little animals with heavy weapons. What's not to like?
Well, thank you for that. Actually, when we set off to make the game, we were originally just going to do human characters. And I was sitting down one day and just kind of fiddling around and drawing, and I drew a little alligator / crocodile, and then I was like giggling to myself because I put Crocs on them. So I sent it to Paul, and I was like, "This is happening. Like, we got to do this at the game."
It was a really fun choice. I really like it.
Yeah, and then since then, actually, I think most of the fan favorite characters usually, like, everybody seems to have a different style, but I think Pants is a pretty common fan favorite. Cook is up there as well. So a lot of the animal characters have been very well received. So yeah, I'm really happy we did that. And plus, it's just been a lot of fun to draw. I think trying to draw a bunch of different people, like a lot of games just have, one character model and then they just give them different skin tones or hats or hair or something like that to mix it up. And it doesn't really feel personal. So with our game, we got to go and it might not have been the best choice in terms of efficiency, but I've done every character totally custom. So they've all got custom rigs, custom animations, custom, like, just giving them some more personality. So they've all got that kind of character to them. So even everything, when you select them in character select, they do a little dance. Like, I got to go and do an individual dance for every character for their personality. So it's been it's been a ton of fun to bring that to life.
Yeah, from a functionality perspective, that one thing that was kind of a great side effect of that as well is, because there's so much going on screen, especially in the later game, then having individual characters with that personality and with that different animations, different shaped characters, really helps you identify yourself on the screen and differentiate between your crew members and things like that. So that's also, that personality carries through from a functional perspective to make life a little bit easier when there's just massive amounts of explosions and things on fire and where you have to be, jumping to the second of things happening on the ship. Which was a really nice side effect of that art style.
Yeah, it's a very clean art style, and having such distinctive characters. Yeah, you're right. Definitely makes them easier to spot with all the chaos going on. That I want to build upon what Julie said about the characters, and I want to talk about the humor in this game, because not a lot of games get humor right. Humor is a hard thing, especially in video games. It's really tough to do right, but your game is hilarious. It is absolutely hilarious. Even with all these battles going on and whatnot and all these high stakes, it never stops being funny.
Yeah, thank you for that. Like I think Paul and I bicker every week about something, and we get into it all the time to try to make sure that it's as funny as can be. And we have very different styles of humor, so there's like a lot of contrast between the two of us. But like, honestly, yeah, like I'll give Paul some serious credit here. Like he writes a lot of the jokes, or at least takes a first stab at them, and like they're really good. Like, and then there's just a lot of kind of low hanging fruit. I think that's more my humor. And then we've kind of tried to match and find a perfect blend of that just, I don't know, we feel like it works at least. So I'm glad to see that it's being received well.
It's actually something that we didn't necessarily set out to do, but it kind of evolved over time. And when we were seeing people play the alpha and the beta and having so much fun with the organically created humor, which is people getting sucked out into space or things bursting into fire just as you arrive at them, then we wanted to lean into that more as the game was being developed to try and emphasize that feeling throughout.
Yeah, I think my favorite my favorite bit of the humor is like your corporate overlords and how like they just clearly don't care, but they're trying to act like they care, so you think they care. But so just, oh my God, it's so funny.
We have a lot of dark humor in there.
I was going to say that some of that humor is really emergent, where once you figure out some strategies, say, for example, if you get the timing right with your shots, you can send the enemy crew as they're going to go repair that gun you just knocked out. You can send them out flying into space because you destroyed the bulkhead near them. And that's a funny thing when you first figure out, hey, I can do that.
Yeah, there's definitely a lot of that from the functionality perspective. And as an addition to that, one of the things that we just kind of threw in without too much thought is we put little names over the enemies. So when you do suck them out into space, it might be, I don't know, Matt, Paul, or Brian, or whatever, is a little name appears above them. And then you're like, haha, suck it, Brian. Like, I got you. So that was a really small thing, but it kind of emphasizes that personal relationship you have with that moment to try and, like you say, kind of emphasize that humor in that organic event.
Taunting them as they go flying.
Yeah.
I actually got my first giggle a few seconds in when Richard appeared first, and it's simply great that it's modeled after Hal.
Oh,
the name of the captain is very, very interesting.
Captain Crick.
Yep, Captain Crick is the starting point, and yeah, we've just had so much fun too, getting to, I guess, give a nod to all of our favorite sci-fi and space references as often as possible. You might also notice the color of shirts that the original crew is wearing. But yeah, we've just the game's just littered with little nods and references to all these other great things that have been created in the sci-fi world and references. And again, I won't drop any spoilers, but for anybody who plays through the full game, it carries through all the way to the end. It's just been a blast getting that in there.
What were you gonna say, Spaz?
I said I can confirm that.
Yeah.
So right now, let's talk about the content that people are going to get tomorrow. We're talking about 5 hours of content, roughly 5 or 10 hours. Is it going to be only the one? I've only seen the one ship. Like, how many ships are going to be available on launch, and that sort of thing? Like, what kind of content are we looking at from the beginning here?
So for early access launch, then there's just the one ship for the moment, and then it's really difficult to say, as an estimate of how much content there are, because it's designed as a procedural and replayable game. So we think you can play 10 plus hours without running out of new things to discover, but that doesn't mean that every time you do a run, it's not different. It's like it changes. So you get events in different orders, or more challenging enemies in certain areas versus others, or different encounters. So I would say, we've got, I wouldn't actually know off the top of my head, but like between 30 and 50 different encounters, some of them being full missions, some of them being more kind of dialogue focused, so you make choices. And whether or not they pop up is completely random based on the run. So there's plenty of mini games that you can play, which are different types. So we tried to have a bit of an ebb and flow to the stressful nature of combat, so you're not always just in a near-death experience. So there's some fun encounters to be had in there, some trading encounters, as well as plenty of enemies, bosses, and things that you have to strategize around the combat as well.
Yeah, I think my favorite specific encounter / minigame, even though it's probably my most maddening, is the EVA suit thing. Is it a race or something where you have to catch a thing in a certain amount of time? Am I remembering that's right, Spaz?
There's a couple that are EVA related that I've come across. At least I've come across at least two. There's one where you have to pick up something that is outside, and then there's another one where you have to reach certain waypoints that are outside.
Yeah, I think that's the one I was thinking of, as the waypoint one, because the fire extinguisher method of control is, again, hilarious.
Yeah, I think Paul was watching Wall-E. I got an idea.
It kind of linked in with the thing you mentioned earlier about the kind of corporate overlords as well, because they've skimped out on actual safety suits, so you have to propel yourself with the fire extinguisher. So it worked quite well in game, but it isn't an easy thing to master.
No, I will confirm that it was really tough trying to because I was fighting my own brain, like I'm pointing this way, I should be going that way, but no, I'm going the opposite. So that was very difficult.
It just takes some getting used to. It's treated like a reverse twin stick shooter, and you can probably be okay.
Yeah, what's interesting, so we hadn't really anticipated this, but we found actually some of the players that were playing the beta or playing a lot actually started to pick up a fire extinguisher before they went out for any scenario, because you can actually move quicker with a fire extinguisher outside the ship than you can space swimming. So the pros of the game, once you've got that down, is actually quite a useful tool to take with you for other missions.
Yep.
That's pretty interesting.
That works.
Yeah, there's been a lot of little like easy to play, hard to master stuff that some have been intentionally left in, and some things like fire extinguisher kind of boosting yourself at the start of some mini games and stuff has been something that some of the other players have discovered. But there's a bunch of little tricks that you can use that, again, I won't spoil anything. I think it's a lot more fun to figure this stuff out yourself. But for players that are looking to kind of like try to improve, or if you're getting stuck on harder difficulties or something like that, there's a lot of little kind of things you can do to optimize your gameplay, and it really helps to get through some of those tougher fights.
Yeah, I gotta say the design of some of the fights is really impressive. What was that one space station that keeps rotating around, and you have to take out, I believe, the reactors? I think. Yeah. That was that kind of stuff. I thought was very clever, like super duper clever.
Yeah, without getting into the specifics of how you fight it, I think it's a very cleverly designed fight.
Yeah, thank you. We put a lot of time and effort into boss fights as well. That's something that frankly has been like one of my areas that I just love, trying to work on boss designs. So every boss has some uniqueness to how you have to kind of engage and deal with those encounters. Obviously, the first one's not too challenging, as you're just getting into the game, but as you get deeper and deeper in, they get like really, really wild in terms of the stuff you need to do and the different mechanics. And we put a lot of effort into trying to make sure that the bosses are different, right? It's not just fighting another ship that's been procedurally generated, because everything is generated. We don't know what you're going to get and run into or what you're going to encounter. So we wanted to make sure that at least for the bosses, we had a little bit of control to say, okay, here's something you've never seen before. Good luck figuring it out, and making sure that you figure out how to get through the fight.
Yeah, I like the puzzle aspect of that. To put it in those terms, it is like figuring out a puzzle, and once you figure it out, you're not brute forcing it. You're just working out the timing, so to speak. Yeah,
exactly. And that's another one where we've seen a couple of different interesting strategies. trying very hard to make sure that nobody gets any spoilers from me. But yeah, we've seen some players do a couple of different, like find different approaches to the same boss to take them down. There is usually like, I guess, what we would consider a best approach, just because we've designed it around the way that we were playing the fight. But again, every once in a while, somebody does something where you go, oh, yeah, I didn't think of that. And it's kind of cool to see different ways people have
emergent
utilized that. Or,
gameplay.
yeah. Yeah, exactly. And there's a lot of different loadouts you can get on your ship, right? So like, even though you might go, oh, well, this worked really well last time because I had a fast gun, and then you get there this time, you're like, oh, all my guns are really slow. It's time to come up with a kind of a slightly different approach to make sure you can still get through.
That's another area that takes a huge amount of balancing and time, but also just thought. So whenever you add something into the game, if it works slightly differently to what's in the game already, then you just have to consider how it interacts with all of the different possible systems that you can get in your ship, for the reasons that you want that emergent gameplay to be consistent, so people get the outcome that they expect if they try and combine different types of systems in their strategy.
I've got to say, the balancing is pretty good. I've played it yesterday on medium difficulty, and I was pretty surprised. It never felt unfair, and that's the thing I experience a lot in other games that obviously don't have as much testing. And I really had fun on medium, I've got to say, without any frustration, which comes obviously a lot in this kind of game.
Yeah, we've really tried to make sure that if you lose, you can say that it's your fault. Like a lot of other roguelikes, if you look at, some of the really popular ones like Hades, Binding of Isaac, like those types of games, they all have, well, like in Hades' case, it has like the Dark Souls roll, right? Where you get like this invincibility frames button that you can push so that when you get hit even, it's always your fault. And in our game, that's just not a possibility, because realistically, you're not playing just as your character, but your guys are also collectively playing like as the ship. And if the ship can avoid taking all damage, it's probably not that fun of a game. So we've come up with a couple of different ways to try to make sure that you can take damage, but it's not too punishing. And then at the end of the fight, if you lose, you can stop and kind of go, okay, why did we lose? And you can try to ask those questions and figure that out yourself. In the earlier days of development, I will say there was fights that just murdered you and there was nothing you could do about it. But every time that happened, we were playing, we'd go, okay, well, how can we make it so that you have the possibility of getting out of this situation? What can you do? And so some of the small changes we made, for example, is we just modified what can load into an enemy ship. So you previously used to be able to get like a ship that just loaded nothing but AoE guns. Well, if you ran into that, you basically lost the game. There was just no way to keep up with that in terms of just the amount of time you needed to fix all those things that were getting broken. So we put like a little bit of a cap so that you won't get a ship that, loads into a way that can just absolutely obliterate you. So I'm always nervous to say this, but I would say now, if you lose, it should be your fault. And there should be something that you can do on the next run to mitigate that.
Should.
Well, from what I've played of it, the 10 hours I've put in, I'd say that seems fair enough to say. Just from the time I put in. And granted, I haven't been playing too much on the harder difficulties, but yeah. If I lose, it's my fault. So I had to figure out what did I do wrong, and then don't do that again.
Yeah, and then we've also got like the nightmare mode we put in challenge. The challenge run in the demo, for example, is something that we're looking to bring into the full game. And that's an area where technically we'll let the numbers crank up to a point where you can't necessarily win. But that's the other one for those players who really want the hardcore challenge. They can get in there and possibly surprise us. Like we've already had some players get to a higher level than Paul and I can get to. So it's been very cool to see people come up with strategies to really push the game to its limits when we let them just kind of go wild with the hardest challenge they can come up with.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Now,
not for the faint of heart, though. That is certainly not an expectation.
Since you brought up the demo, I wanted to ask something about that. Is there going to be a demo available once the game goes live again tomorrow? Are you going to put the demo back up for people?
Yeah, the demo should be up now, and it will continue to be up.
Okay.
Yep. So if people just want to taste the game, then they can play the demo. And the demo itself has two modes. It has the first world from the easy difficulty of the game, but also if you really want that challenge, it's got a replayable challenge mode, which is actually harder than a lot of the game because it ramps up over a short period of time. But that'll give you a sense of how the game compares in the early game versus the late game within a short little experience.
And I wanted to ask because for a while demos weren't a thing, and now they're a thing again. Have you found them particularly useful for hunting bugs and getting feedback and that sort of thing? Have you found them useful?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, one of the core tenets of how we were developing the game was also to involve the community as early as possible. So our alpha was actually like a year and a half ago. Our beta was last year as well, and then the demo came out in October. So between those three things, we managed to gather a load of feedback and watch people play and get a sense of what people like, what people don't, and get their feedback directly. I think also the resurgence in demos is partly down to Steam as well.
Yeah.
So Valve have made a big deal about the Next Fests. So we launched for Next Fest in October last year. That is a great way, especially for indie games, of getting some exposure on Steam around an event like that. So that's probably a big reason that devs from the dev side are also pushing demos more than they were, is the popularity of those events. And then people seem to love them. Like, we get great engagement from the demo. So we're planning to support that as long as we can as well, to just allow people to have a little taste before they decide whether they want to buy the game.
Now that's wonderful, because I'm a big fan of demos, and they went out of fashion for quite a long time, But then like you said, Steam had their Next Fest, and now they are back in fashion, and I think it's just good for everybody.
It absolutely is.
Something that nobody has asked about yet, and I'd like to ask about. Nobody's asked you about your company, and how is it somebody from Canada ends up having a business with somebody from Ireland? I bet you there's a story there.
That's a great question.
Yeah, absolutely. So I move a lot is basically the short version of that. So I had moved to Ireland a few years ago, and when you move to a new place, you don't know anybody. And so one of the outlets that I found is really great is I've joined indie game development communities kind of all over the world. And it's been a wonderful way to meet people who are, like intelligent and passionate and doing something kind of cool with their spare time. So I'd noticed, I think Paul had made a post on an indie group in Ireland, basically saying that he was looking to, he's teaching himself to be a developer, and he'd been working on this other game, and he was looking to, just kind of meet more people. So he and I started chatting on there, and we went and grabbed a pint and just started talking about, at the time I was brand new there. So I was saying, I don't really have time to get into another game project right now. And so I was like, but I'm glad to help. So we sat down, we started talking about, he's like, well, I want to start another game. So what kind of I'd love to just chat with somebody who is, has similar interests, and figure out what I want to make next. And so we came up with this great idea for this co-op space game, and you could fight, the enemy ships at the same time. And actually the initial design was very different than it ended up. We actually had kind of two screens in the first build where you could fight enemies on one screen and you could drive and repair your ship on the other. And we found it didn't work very well, so we ended up putting both the things on screen at the same time, which actually pulled the game a lot closer to the FTL feeling. But yeah, so we started discussing the game and what we thought would be really cool. We got really passionate about this idea, and then I was trying to just be a passive advisor, but it didn't last long. I got pulled right in and started working on development, and we've been building this ever since. That was about 4 years ago.
So this is not your first game? You've worked on games before?
Yeah, so I've worked for a company as actually I used to be a programmer. I'm doing all the art for This Means Warp, but I did all the coding for other places. So I worked for a company that did AR games for mobile experiences at parks and stuff like that. And previously I released another game called Super Robot Jump Jump. Not quite up to the quality standards, I think, of This Means Warp. I've learned a few things over the years, but I made a 2D platformer, kind of a Super Meat Boy-esque style game. And if you don't like hard games, then that was the wrong one, because I did not hold back. That game is ludicrously difficult.
What?
Yeah, Shogun, did you say something there, sir?
Yeah.
I said, okay.
Okay. Yeah.
I don't have much else to comment on the topic. Okay, because I've been wondering, let me phrase my question. So, I'm actually wondering, because this game has an interesting setup, an interesting premise, but I'm wondering what the game's general market that you are sort of going for would be like. Because I'm trying to figure out like who is this game for. It's not that I don't like it. It's just kind of a semi-rhetorical question because it's an FTL-like, but FTL players tend to prefer a lot of strategizing and a lot of thought put into their actions. Combining that with a chaotic, panicked co-op game, which
it's an unusual.
That's a bad combination, but I'm wondering like what the target audience would be, because it's also not the people who play like Artemis or Quintet or Pulsar Lost Colony, which is another set of games I wanted to compare this to, because paradoxically that style of gameplay, a co-op space game, works far better in a roguelike setting, because sessions in a roguelike don't last for several dozen hours. It's not an overarching campaign that goes on for however long. So you don't have to set the damn thing up in advance like a Dungeons and Dragons game and have to align 4 schedules for 4 hours over the course of once per week. But like, who is this game for, generally speaking?
It's a really good question, and something that we put a lot of thought into, because there aren't that many games that fill this space, and we've kind of found the reason for that is it is so difficult to balance, and you're kind of trying to cater for different tastes. So we've got a relatively broad audience, I would say, because we do have the people that like the hardcore roguelike type experiences, but also those that maybe want to play with their partner who isn't too familiar with games, or their kids, or want to bring in someone that's more of a casual gamer than hardcore. So it's a kind of split between those. But there's quite a few cooperative roguelike games where people want to have a experience of anywhere between, let's say, an hour to 1 to 2 hours with their friends, where they can group up and play together cooperatively rather than competitively. And so there's games like Gunfire Reborn or Risk of Rain 2 or Deep Rock Galactic, and it just so happens that a lot of those tend to be first-person shooters. So all of those games weren't even announced when we started developing, but that's the kind of mindset that we're trying to apply to it, where it's relatively accessible, but brings people together as a group, as a team. And we built from that into the single-player experience as well, where you could have more of an experience closer to something like FTL, but with a much faster pace. And then the other thing that we found from our initial research is when we're talking about party games for people, it's usually a very short experience. So if you play a game like Overcooked or something like that, then you complete a level, but then the level is over within 2 or 3 minutes, and that's like a natural drop-off point, and then you have to pick it up again. So we thought there's an opportunity for that experience, that kind of high-tempo adrenaline, to carry through with a strategic underlay that carried you through multiple encounters. So you're gradually building up and getting more and more attached to the equipment and your crew as you go on.
Yeah, absolutely. Because
go on.
Because exactly as I've said, this is co-op games. The co-op games tend to have the issue that getting one person to play something for 4 hours straight is easy-ish. But getting 4 people to align schedules and play something for several hours in one sitting is not the easiest thing in existence. Trust me, I know from experience, I have to try and do that on the weekly.
Yeah, it's definitely a fair point. And this is also one of the critical things that was always on the roadmap. Something that we based the game around really was online multiplayer. So it's great when you're playing with your friends and you can chat them over Discord. But if you haven't got a lot of friends that play PC games, so for example, a lot of my games, my friends aren't big gamers, then you can also find new people either on our Discord community or online in the game itself and play with them. So it's not required to have other people that you need to round up for a session. Or you can play single player as well if you prefer that kind of experience.
Yeah, I fully agree with you, Paul. Because we did a multiplayer game before the podcast now, and it was a real different experience to other games like Artemis or Pulsar in that regard, and it was much more fun. And you can really get someone into that in a very short amount of time, actually. And I like that.
Because it is so very approachable compared to a lot of other games.
There's a much lower barrier of entry for this than, say, Artemis or Pulsar.
Yeah, fully agree.
Yeah, we've gone in with that kind of mantra as well. Like, we want you to be able to play with a controller with very simple buttons and, like, nothing crazy complicated. But again, like, one game that I love is Rocket League, right? You can play Rocket League when you're terrible, and then you can watch a pro play Rocket League and they're amazing. And they use the same controls, same car. They haven't unlocked anything you haven't unlocked, but like the ability to expand your skill is basically really there. And so we've gone with a bit of that for This Means Warp. It's not nearly the same skill ceiling as something like Rocket League, but you can certainly, get better and figure out what you're doing wrong, but also just like have a good time and play kind of in a potentially easier difficulty or with other people. And I see Mike wrote in the comments that, it's for him and his son. It's like, yeah, that's kind of something that kept happening, as well as every time we'd watch people play, there'd be a different group of people playing the game. And they'd go, oh, this would be great with, so-and-so. Like, we had some people saying, oh, my significant other doesn't play games, but I think they'd be really into this one. Or, oh, my kids would have a great time with this. And so originally, Paul and I were just aiming to build a game that we like, because, that's where you start. And then as we kind of saw that expand, we went, okay, well, maybe, like for us, we've played, as I said, like over 1,000 hours now. So easy mode isn't for us anymore, but we still wanted to make sure we had that in there and to support that, anybody can come and pick it up and have a good time. So it's a terrible question for like a marketing team, because they're like, what's our target audience? And you go, oh, I don't know, everybody. But like in terms of a game, it's been great to just be able to say like, yeah, hopefully anybody can pick this up and give it a shot. I think the only people who might not be into it is, people who just are adamantly against indie games. But outside of that, it's it kind of fits for everybody.
Are there people who are adamantly against indie games?
I've met them. I met a few,
It's a number greater than zero.
Yeah.
What?
I know it is crazy, but they are out there. I mean, I don't understand them, but they exist.
I don't understand them either.
One thing I wanted to say I appreciate so much is because my job that pays the bills is extremely high stressful, and there's a lot of money at stake in any given day. And I end up screaming a lot to myself. And so when I encounter a game like the one Brian has been playing before this, and it becomes a job, I turn it off and I say, look, I'm just done. And at the end of the day, this reminds me something that's just fun to play, like Cosmonautica. And I don't know if anybody else has played that, but it's a fun little space game. It doesn't take me, I don't have to sit down and have to figure out exactly how to play it. I can just jump in and have fun like we did this morning with Thorsten and Spaz. And thanks, Spaz, for being our guide.
Of course.
It's kind of why we're in game development, really. Myself and Matt, I think Matt mentioned it earlier. If something's more fun, then we put it in. If it's less fun, then we don't. And so the whole purpose, the reason that we love making games, the reason that we, don't do the kind of stressful corporate side of things as much as to bring that kind of joy and sense of fun. So that's hopefully coming across in the game itself.
Yeah, like this is a game I think I could introduce my wife to, who doesn't really play games very much. And if she does, she wants as few buttons as possible. And you guys have done a really good job making it very controller efficient.
The one button space game, yes.
And not exactly one button, but it's very few buttons.
Very few buttons.
So I actually have a question that's a bit of an odd one. Not sure if you even can answer it because I just looked over the Steam page, the Steam store page, and you managed to snag a publishing deal with Jagex of RuneScape fame.
Yeah.
I'm wondering how that happened. If there's something to it, like how does an indie space game get picked up by, of all people? I mean, I know Jagex has done a couple games before that they picked up. There was the Ace of Spades remake that we don't talk about, but they don't really do much. And on Steam, they have RuneScape and RuneScape accessories mostly. So how did they get in contact with you? And how did that happen?
Yeah, it's a great question. So a lot of luck is involved, but we were talking to a few publishers, and we're really fortunate. When I went to the UK to the EGX game showcase towards the end of last year, then someone from Jagex just came up, and it just so happened that a number of the team had been playing the demo. and were really, really loving it and kind of got a little bit addicted to it. So that kind of sparked the conversation. And what we found is Jagex, I think, are looking to expand their portfolio specifically on games that are built around community. So the fact that we'd had the alpha and made huge changes to the game, and then the beta, and really involved our community all the way through the development process, really aligned with what Jagex were looking to do as a publisher and expand their portfolio with that type of community-driven game. So we really bonded over that approach, and that's something that I think you probably have seen with RuneScape as well, in that kind of player-led development pipeline. It just so happened that the stars aligned, and we signed towards the end of last year, just before Christmas, and they've been amazing help ever since as well. They're super passionate about the game, bringing a load of skills, resources, and expertise that as a small indie studio that we wouldn't be able to match. So it's been incredible. So we're super grateful to them for jumping on board, and it's been really exciting. But it also means that the future is really exciting as well, because we've got all these plans that we wanted to do past early access launch, and that means that that's now a reality. Now we can plan that as updates past release. So we've got huge plans to expand the game through that partnership with Jagex as well. That's
brilliant to hear. Now, I know I'm on this podcast, I'm allowed to be snarky, so I will be. I sincerely hope that Jagex Limited has learned their lesson from Ace of Spades and aren't just going to rework the entire sodding thing because they feel like it.
Well, I can't speak for Jagex, but they're putting us under no pressure to make changes. They're on board because they love the game, and they've been fantastic to work with.
Lovely.
And happy for us to drive that.
Remind me, what is or was Ace of Spades? I don't think I know.
Ace of Spades was a simple indie game. It was essentially in the heyday of Minecraft clones. It was a block building competitive shooter. Pretty simple stuff. Pretty simple stuff, but that simplicity and the and general. Like the store pages got posted, but initially it was a simple indie game. You had two teams. You had your equipment was a rifle, a shovel, and blocks, and the big appeal of it was you could build and break stuff on the map with pretty much to your heart's content. So you could do all kinds of fun stuff with buildings, trench lines, bridges, and all that. The problem became when Jagex picked it up. They just kind of decided they're gonna rework the game completely and just keep the base elements, but then pile on like 70 to 90% new stuff, including like a class system. What else? A progression system, more weapons that broke the balance, a jetpack because you just get to ignore the game's complexity. It was a mess. You
can't buy it anymore, apparently.
Because it got taken off store shelves due to the sheer violent backlash towards it, which is highly unfortunate. Because Ace of Spades by itself was pretty remarkable, if rather simple. So, hopefully, Jagex has learned from that.
Yeah, I can say, at least from our end, working with the team at Jagex, like their genuine approach has been, you guys build this, and like even our roadmap coming up, like we're entirely flexible on it. So we've said like many times with Jagex, like our plan is to be community driven. So if the community says, actually we don't want this, we want this instead, then we can shift and pivot and go into that. And all those decisions are entirely with us and with Outliers. So like. Again, we weren't around or involved in Ace of Spades at all, so can't really speak to that. But at least in our situation, like as Paul said, they've been fantastic and nothing but supportive in the sense of like, you guys, this is your baby, make it great, and they trust us entirely in that sense as well. Where the game's gotten this far on us designing and deciding what to do next and how it should be put together. So they've just basically been there, like, we are here to support and you guys build. So it's been a great relationship on that front. So. And that's a genuine truth. They've been awesome.
Lovely.
I wanted to ask this question mostly because I know the answer now, and it's almost always never in these cases. But when does the Switch console version come out?
So we are aiming roughly a year, no specific date yet, but we are aiming for in roughly 1 year to do the full 1.0 release. And the plans for that today are to do all consoles. So that's whatever Microsoft, Sony, and not Windows, Microsoft, Sony, and Nintendo console is out at the moment. So presumably we're aiming for that to be Switch. And we'll do a full, also a full release on PC. So that'll bring it out of early access. So we have more content planned for that we're working on. We've started on some of that already, actually. So we're going to try to get more content developed, more stuff into the game, and also have that ported across all consoles.
So David's question from the chat, then, will there be cross-platform between consoles? Hopefully is the answer. So we're going to try for it. Technical issues aside, that's a very complex networking question, but the plan is for it to be cross-play as long as the technology allows. So hopefully we can get everybody playing together, because that's what we love about the game is bringing people in to other people's games.
Oh, that would be great. That would be great. We've got also another question in the chat from Luke. What about boarding actions in the game? Is something in that direction planned or not?
This is a good question, because it comes up very frequently. So this is one of the top requested features from our community, and something that we've been thinking about for a long time. And the only reason really that it isn't in the game already is just a question of how do we balance this with the existing game system. And the fundamental element of that really is just the time it takes for players to potentially get across to enemy ships or be on board enemy ships to achieve any action. Erodes the time that they're able to run around their ship, repairing things and interacting with their systems. And that means that the game can kind of run away with you relatively quickly if you don't have ability to reach those systems. So that's the kind of challenge that we're thinking about. But we are definitely open to suggestions and working out how it might work for future updates.
I'm thinking,
yes, thank you.
You need something like a player cannon. You
shoot you
jump
across.
onto the cannon and it shoots you over to the other ship. That's how you get over there quickly. It doesn't guarantee you can get back, but that's not the problem here.
well, I was thinking like sending the players over there might be a little too complicated. So maybe have like a drone thing you can send over there to wreak havoc.
Yeah, that is actually one of the ideas that we've kind of thought about internally as well a little bit is something that you control remotely from your ship, so that you can kind of at any time jump off and still run around and fix something if it needs happening. But nothing finalized yet, but it is a good idea.
Oh, that'd be a fun thing, like a remote controlled drone. Make it look like Maximilian from Black Hole. That'd be fun.
We have had drones in the game previously as well for one of the interactables that we've tampered with. We've stripped them out for the time being, but yeah, it's definitely something we've been fiddling with. And honestly, I love the boarding question, because it's one of those like, oh my god, we've tried so many different ways to make this work, and so it's still on the forefront of something we'd love to do. Yeah, it's just a matter of making sure it's right. So I'm actually really excited for the game to launch, because I think once everybody's gotten a chance to play through everything and the full game and do runs and kind of get very comfortable with the systems, I'm excited to see what kind of conversation that generates on our Discord server to see if anybody has a better solution than we've come up with so far, or if we can kind of decide, I guess, as a community, like, yeah, this is the right thing to do, and then Paul and I can kind of truck on and get something implemented.
So the version we played did have some drones. Have those been removed for the time being? Because there was a reload drone and a repair drone, I think.
Yeah, so that's just a wording thing for us, actually. So my mistake on that. We do have, we call them bots. So we have repair bots, ammo bots, and all of those are still okay. We did have a system basically where we had drones that were outside of your ship, like hovering around and shooting at stuff. Those are not currently in the game, but they've been a system we've been tampering with for a while and trying to play around with how that would work and stay balanced. And let's just say when you had 15 drones floating around outside of your ship shooting everything, it wasn't very fun. So we've stripped them back for the time being, but it's definitely something we're looking into as well.
Yeah, like that might be something you replace a gun with. Like instead of a gun, you have like a drone control unit or something where you control like a bunch of drones that do damage instead of a single gun. Something like that.
Yeah,
or
to keep
even
it balanced.
Even in the case of a drone control, you hop on it like a gun, and
yeah, exactly.
You would set its priority, so you don't actually control the drones themselves. You set a priority for what you want the drones to target, and then they go and do that thing.
Yeah. Yeah, that sounds reasonable.
That's very, very doable.
Yeah, that's actually that's a really good idea, and that's probably somehow like close to how this will end up functioning. Because there will be a day where this gets in the game. Let's face it; like it's been requested so many times.
It's just a matter of
that's exactly. It's just a matter of getting it right, because and this is what Paul and I do genuinely every week. We sit down, we have a question like this, and we go, okay, well, how would this work? Okay, well, you can get on the drone and control it. Okay, well, you can target it towards something. Okay, well, what if you set this as its priority? How often should it hammer this thing? How much damage should it do? Should it do area of effect damage? Should it do single target damage? Should you have to get back on the thing to recharge it or retarget it? Like, should there be, should players have to come back and interact with this? And that's kind of the rabbit hole that we end up going down. And next thing you know, 3 hours have passed and we've designed one new thing. And that's just, what we've been hammering away at for years now.
Yeah, I could see it being the sort of thing where you actually have to load it with ammo, and then that loads the drones. And then they do their thing, they go through whatever cycle it is, they come back to the ship, and then you have to load another ammo in order to get them to do their thing again.
And that's actually a really good idea. So there's one other area that we're kind of working towards is we're planning to have another player ship in the future. And what we want to do with player ships is not just have another layout, because as much as that would still be fun, we're really hoping to make them feel more like almost like other games where it's been different playable characters give you a whole different experience. So if I use Slay the Spire for an example, in that game, when you chose a different character, the cards that you got were entirely different. So the game mechanics were the same, but the actual gameplay changed pretty drastically. So that's something we want to do with player ships as well. So something like that is a great idea, where we've talked about, well, how do you use ammo in different ways? Because, instead of just traditionally shooting guns, how can we add a little something extra to those ships? So stay tuned. That might be the right way to implement the next player ship.
We have another question in the chat from Fernando. Have you considered a future expansion with versus player battles?
Yeah, another very common request from our community as well. So I think you've hit the top two there. With boarding and PvP. So again, something we would love to do. We haven't got it confirmed on the roadmap, but it's definitely something that we're considering. From a technical standpoint, then the enemy ships currently work in the same way as the player ships. So we could potentially have a 2v2 or something like that. One of the challenges that comes with that is just fitting that sheer amount on the screen. So whether we do that available for local multiplayer or just for online multiplayer, where we could play a few tricks with the camera, I don't know, but it's something that we'll have to think about. But that is a huge functional expansion, I would say. So it's something that we have to really think carefully about, because it's at the expense of other features we want to put in the game. But it's definitely on the board in things that we're talking about.
And just to take a chance to give out a shameless plug on that one, it's really also, there's going to be a lot of this that is based around the success of the game. The bigger the community, the more people who want to play, the more people who are asking for these features, gives us a lot more validity to say, yeah, this is worth putting in all the time and effort to make sure that works and that it's fun and all those other systems. So if there's enough games live and enough players and everybody's interested, we will, absolutely look to expand more and more. So on that note, if anybody's looking to get the game and you want to give a nudge to 100 or 200 friends of yours, just fire away. And that would be really awesome to give us a hand and try to just get the word out so that we can have enough players to make PvP something that's possible.
You think I have double, much less triple digits friends? All right, I appreciate a vote of confidence, but you're blatantly wrong.
You can print off some flyers, head down to Home Depot, whatever works. Just
Shogun, everyone watching this stream and everyone listening to the podcast is one of our friends. So there you go.
There you go.
Fair enough.
You have lots of friends.
No, there's no Home Depot in this country, but I guess there are equivalents thereof.
I mean, now speaking of PvP, just for a moment, I could see a sort of thing where you have an asynchronous PvP, where the layout of the ship and the characters that are on that ship, whatever skill levels they've bought during the course of their run, you could submit that to a leaderboard, and then other people can challenge that ship with the AI controlling that ship.
That could be fun. Yeah,
that's interesting.
An option.
The core of that is actually something that we're definitely thinking about in general, which is the kind of leaderboard or run-based challenge. So the game currently is seeded, so you can play the same seed as someone else got, and then have the same experience, the same missions and things like that to challenge them to see if you can do better where maybe they failed, see if you can get further. So that's another thing that is already in the game for people that want to push themselves against other players.
Oh, that's cool. That's a good idea.
You know, that does give me an idea, though, of, at the very least, potentially one of the new encounters that we could add in the future could just be facing off against another player ship with like a similar loadout to yourself.
Ooh.
Sure, yeah.
Just to see how you do. Yeah.
Ooh, make
A mirror
that
match.
and make that an option if you want that in your run or not. You know, like I don't want any other players. Like you can make that a toggleable. How do you say that?
Toggleable.
Sort of like
Toggleable.
the invasion mechanic in games like Dying Light.
Dark Souls.
Yeah, something that's optional. Like I do want that kind of. I do want other player ghost ships in my run. You know, that kind of thing. Yeah, that'd be a fun thing to add to a run.
For sure, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh man! So the game comes out tomorrow as we record this, March 17th, and there's about a year planned for early access. What kind of price range are we looking at?
So the game will be $19.99 US or your local equivalent.
That is a steal, you guys. That is an absolute steal.
I will have to ask the inevitable question: is there a 4-pack at a discount?
So this is something that we got asked a lot, and we tried to get, but unfortunately Valve have stopped supporting multi-pack bundles.
Right, that happened.
Oh,
so
yeah.
we'd love to do it, but no, we can't. Can't do it.
I keep forgetting they stopped that because I still see some games that have those every now and again. I guess they got.
I'm pretty sure
Those were grandfathered.
I was going to say they got grandfathered in, yeah. So I still see that every now and again.
For some inane reason, Steam, like I get, like
No,
I'm
the
guessing
reason why they don't do it is because of refunds. That's the reason why they stopped doing flash sales during the sale event, and the reason why they stopped doing the multi-pack bundles is because of refunds. Because with those, it complicates the issue significantly.
That's sad. I get it,
Yeah.
but it's sad.
It's really unfortunate sometimes. I mean, I understand where and Valve's coming from, why they've made the decisions they've made, but yeah, there's a few things like you can't do pre-order sales because again, what if the game never comes out or the developers, bugger off and then you don't get a game later? Like people would be upset about that, and fair enough. So you can't do pre-sales, you can't do 4-packs. Like there's a lot of limitations on that, and I think it's just due to the fact that Steam's trying to cater for everybody, right? And the same thing with refunds. They've made a lot of that system automated, so you can do an automated refund if you're under X hours, et cetera, and then yeah, it's kind of removed some of this functionality. So it's unfortunate, but as Paul said, we really wanted to do it. Like this was a plan for a long time on our roadmap, and can't do it with Steam. Possibility that when we hit other storefronts in the future, that might be something that we can do. But for Steam, at least for EA, it's not going to be happening, unfortunately.
That's a shame. I get it with the refund thing. I do get it, but that is still a shame. Because for a game like this, you'd want to, like a 4-pack just makes sense. It makes total, absolute sense. But boo.
I mean, at the very worst, you do have the ability to gift a game to someone else. So
yeah. It's tedious as hell to do that, but you can do that. It's
right.
It is such a freaking process to do that. But yeah, that is an option. Especially 3 times. Like, what if you want? Oh my god! That's not how I want to spend an afternoon. Is gifting multiple Steam games because that's how long it would take. Is an afternoon. So, does anyone have any other questions before we start wrapping up? It's been well over an hour now, so we should probably start wrapping up.
Me actually.
Okay.
Go ahead, Julie.
No, just that I just wanted to talk to the devs offline for a moment after the show.
Absolutely.
Cool.
Okay, Thorsten.
My question is, what is the plans for the future development? I mean, especially after the leaving the early access. Are there any DLCs planned or something? Or
Sorry, go on, Matt.
Sure. Yeah. So basically, we've got 3 main drops that we've got planned at the moment. As we've been saying, we are very community driven. So we're going to try to promise what's going to go in these drops. But if we feel like there's a better direction to go in, we're going to do that instead. But at the moment, yeah, the big pieces are just like 1, more content across the board. I think it's going to be the main piece of the first update that we're going to do. So some new guns, new mini games, extra survival modes, new mission types, events, things like that. The second drop, we're going to try to make sure we have, again, just more of general content and everything in the game, but also we're going to be focusing on trying to get an extra boss into the game. And then for the third one is going to be like basically that 1.0 launch, and that's where we're going to be aiming for at least 1 new player ship, as well as another content drop with more of a little bit of everything, right? Sprinkled in with guns and interactables and all sorts of that stuff. So should be pretty content packed within around this time next year.
okay.
Any other questions?
Good. All right. Seems like it's a good time to wrap up then. It sounds like is there anything we did? I guess, is there anything, gentlemen, that we didn't cover that you want to get out there before we wrap up?
So the game's coming out tomorrow, March 17th. So pick it up on Steam, and if you like it, please leave a review and join our Discord as well, because we want to hear from people and hear their feedback and hear their ideas. So all the links and everything are at thismeanswarp.com, and people can get playing tomorrow.
Yeah,
it's a really active Discord too.
Yep.
And the game is great. I think have all played it at this point, or I think most of us have played it at this point, and it is so fun. It is so, even by yourself. I know it looks like a bomber crew type thing where you got to have, and you it can play with up to 4 people, but it's also got very competent bots, so you can play by yourself. Very competent bots, which is very important. So if you look at this and think, oh God, I need friends. No, you don't need friends to play this. I mean, it's great if you have friends.
If you have them.
Yeah, it's great if you have friends, but you don't need them. You could totally play this by yourself and have a great time. We played Spaz and I played, that stream will go live again tomorrow. I had to take it down, but it'll go back up tomorrow. It was 2 of us and 2 bots, and the bots did a great job. They really did. They made it manageable. They didn't make it too hectic, which is what you want a good bot to do. So, gentlemen,
there is one thing I should mention.
Okay.
Before we wrap up, there is another feature that we haven't talked about, which is that you can save a session. If the host saves the session, quits and saves the session, you can pick it back up again later.
Oh, that's good. That's good. I didn't know that. That's very good. That is
also, if fingers crossed anything crashes or breaks on day 1, then that auto saves, so you can always jump back into your game if anything goes down.
Oh, good. How often does it auto save?
Just in case. After every mission.
Oh,
so
good.
It should be picking right back up where you left off. So that's also our safety net if anything happens or goes wrong for anybody.
Oh, that's great. I do love a good liberal autosave. I do love, if you can't save anytime you want, a good liberal autosave is the next best thing. So that is great. So yeah, guys, friends, the game is This Means Warp. It comes into early access tomorrow as we record this. March 17th, 2022. It's going to be $20 American or whatever that price is in your neck of the woods. And we can tell you it is going to be great. It is so much fun. It's shockingly fun. I had more fun than I was intending with it. When I saw it, I was like, oh God, FTL. But I had so much fun with this game because it's a great balance of seriousness and humor. It's very chaotic, but not unmanageable. It's the right kind of chaos. So I cannot recommend it enough. And gentlemen, I want to thank you for coming on, taking the time out of your busy day, especially the day before launch. I really appreciate you taking the time to come on to talk to us. And we'll definitely have to have you back once this hits 1.0, because we love hearing the journey from early access to 1.0. We love hearing how that goes. So we'll definitely have to have you back.
Yeah, well, thanks for having us.
Well, that's going to do it for this week. Next week, folks, on the show, I think, I did offer it to a guest, but they took another date. So next week on the show, we're going to talk about freeware space games. Because there are quite a few of them. And there are a lot of really good ones. too. So we're going to educate you guys on the space games you can play for no money down. Have a great day, everyone. Be safe, be well. And again, if you can, please, for everyone's sake, please get vaccinated if you can. Please. Do it for yourself. Do it for your family. Do it for your friends. Is really the best thing you can do to help us all get through this. So please, if you can, get vaccinated. And with that, we'll bid you a good day. Have a good one, everyone. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Ah.